Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to dive into some of my favorite fall fishing techniques. The month of October is upon us. A lot of things changing, and it really made it tough on me to decide just a handful of lures that I'm going to go out and try to catch bass on right now, because there's so many different techniques going on, and it's tough. Typically the fall is translate into tough fishing. The transition is probably the toughest time of year to go fishing. But it's the thing, the nights are getting cooler, they have to start feeding up. So I'm gonna sort of go over a handful of things, actually my top 6. I know sometimes we'll do top 3, sometimes top 5. I just couldn't leave it all out, and there's probably like 5 more that I did not put in this video that I would like to, but I just would be too long. So without further ado, we're going to dive into some of my favorite lures for the month of October. Down here in the south, to give you guys an overview, a lot of our southern impoundments, our water temperatures are anywhere between 65 to 75 degrees, really set high 60s to 75, 76. We got those cooler nights coming in. And those fish, typically there starts to be drawdowns, and what I mean by that is there's a lot of these lakes are starting to draw down. Now, for some of my friends up north, Canada, and even further north, going up, up in Canada and Minnesota, or fishing in New York, can't go much further north than that. So realistically up there, this is really starting to become one of those times where they have to start. This is like the last hurrah. These fish have to start feeding, because within the next month, you guys up there in the top part of New York, or even further into Canada, you guys are going to potentially start to see those frigid cold temperatures, and potentially, depending on how the year goes, maybe even starting to see some skim ice and stuff like that. So I'm not going to dive too deep into that, but for some of those up there, the winter series, I'll dive into some of these baits when those water temperatures drop into those 40s, and that's some of the stuff that you guys are going to want to start to utilize. Obviously, some of the cooler water techniques that are going to be major players. Right now, I'm going to really focus on the water temperature between that 60 to 75 degree mark, and that transition and what's going on. Now, these baits have all caught fish all over the country for me. So let's dive into it right now.
Let's go.
We're here in Mexico. We are in the Dominican Republic. So I'm gonna tell you a couple different tips that have helped me over the years.
Wow! Unbelievable! Jacob Wheeler makes history!
First up on my lineup, I wanted to pick a lure that I feel like is super versatile and is a bait that works really well. A lot of the fish that are out there feeding on shad or some sort of bait fish. And so that's why I picked this lure. This is called a Guggen Dart. This is a 5 inch, this is a 6 inch, and then I even picked a 7 inch to show you sort of like what we have. And this is a soft profile or soft plastic jerk bait. And sort of how I rig it up is a little bit more unique, and this is what I'm going to focus on. Now, as far as colors go, shad profiles, this is sort of like a more natural, like almost like a herring. This is more of like really more of a green gizzard shad profile. And if the bait's smaller, you could even go downsize into a smaller profile soft jerk bait. But this is something that's going to be super versatile. You can fish it around flats, you can fish around boat docks, you can skip it around undercut banks, skip it around like little places, and really trigger fish into biting, especially like grass flats and stuff like that. This is where I'm going to throw this. Now, the way you can typically rig this is you can rig this with a Texas rig style hook, and Texas rig this bait where it's weedless. Now, if you're fishing around a lot of weeds, or trying to skip this underneath places, docks and whatnot, or undercut banks, and where there's a lot of overhanging trees or anything like that, you might go for a typical 4-eye, wide gap hook. I like to go with a thinner profile or thinner gauge wire. But this is something one of my favorite ways to rig this bait right here. So I actually have 3 separate hooks, and I'll show you guys. I have 2 straight shanks, and a buddy of mine, Ryan Davidson, actually sort of turned me on to this. So I have 2 big straight shanks, like what you would flip with, and then I have a Finesse Nico hook. This is sort of what I use to thread a lot of my plastics on for my drop shot. So I'm going to start with my Finesse Nico because this is a bait that this is a hook that I really like. A 1/0. This is right here. I actually pulled it right out of the package, and it has a little bit of a fluorocarbon little keeper right there where I could thread it on there. You guys probably can't quite see. I'll try to put something where I could bounce it off of it. There's a little bit of a fluorocarbon keeper, and you can see on the back of here, it's sort of that little fluorocarbon keeper allows for your bait to sort of get locked in. So that's what I'm using a lot of times on my drop shot. This is going to be just weightless. So I'll get that hook set up like that. This is the 5-inch. This is going to work really well for that 5-inch profile size-wise. I'm going to really put him in there. I'm going to thread him on there. Open, exposed, and then I'm going to really push down on that fluorocarbon keeper to lock that plastic in place, okay? So it's locked in place, and now I can cast out there, twitch it around. I'm fishing open water, schooling fish, anything like that. If I want a little bit smaller of a profile, I'll even cut down the head a little bit more and get that hook shank a little bit further back into the soft plastic. So, but that's really what I like. I like that open hook because when they bite it, I'll use this on a spinner rod, and I can cast it out there, and when they bite it, you just reel down and zzz, got them. This is a really good technique when those fish are not wanting to come up and bite a topwater. They don't want to break the surface. Actually qualified for the All-American back in 2010. It was a flat, calm day on Kentucky Lake, and I was catching them in the grass. I had school fish in the grass, and I could not get them to bite a topwater, and I picked up a little soft plastic jerkbait like this one right here and caught them on this exact technique. So something that's worked really well for me in October. And now that's the Finesse Nico hook. That's the one I'm using in that 5-inch. Now, if you're going to go to a little bit bigger profile soft plastic, this is a 6-inch right here. That's when I'm going to pick up a bigger profile hook. Or you got bigger fish that you really want to set the hook on, or you want to throw the bait caster, so you want a little bit thicker gauge of wire. So this is where I'm going to switch it up. Same thing, I'm going to tie, your favorite knot. For me, I'll just tie a polymer on this. And it's going to be, again, I'm going to thread this on there. Again, you could Texas rig this, but this allows it if it's more open water. I don't have to worry about setting the hook real hard because the fish, it's really just a pull set. It's just an open hook. So then the same thing, I have them locked in there, but this way you actually have that hook point out. It's a big profile gap hook. You could put, if you for some reason you feel like that's too big of a profile hook, you could throw the 3/0. And I'll sort of work back and forth depending on if I feel like the fish are looking at it. I don't always, a lot of people think that like, oh man, you see that big giant gaff of a hook, man, a fish is running up there looking at it. When I'm twitching it really pretty fast, they're coming up there and blowing up on it. Sometimes they're not really looking at that hook point, but I have seen it when I slow it down. If they can look at it, especially spotted bass, that hook point can sort of deter them away. That's when I'll sort of switch it up and go to that smaller profile hook if I have to where they really can't get a good look at what's going on. So that's really the two different ways I'm gonna rig this guy. Again, that's the Finesse Nico, and that's just a 4/0 heavy duty flipping hook that's from BMC. So two different things: 5-inch, 6-inch Guggenbaits dart shad profiles. Go to work, cast them on flats. You're gonna catch some bass. Second for me will be a swim bait. I have not put a swim bait in my arsenal as of yet, and this is going to be more finesse swim bait. This is a little 3-inch Largo shad, smaller profile swim baits because the bait a lot of times is a little bit smaller this time of year. I'm trying to really imitate a thread fin shad, so that little 3-inch bait is perfect. Again, this is probably going to be on a spinner rod. This is a 3/16-ounce jig head from BMC. This is a little hybrid swim bait head. This is actually a little sprout hook, which is my favorite hook, an inline tie. And I'm going to throw this around grass, around wood, around any little type of. Normally, you're going to need a little bit of clarity of water for this. So I have this as the gizzard shad color. There's a sexy shad color for a little bit of stained water. And then if the water's a little bit more stained, then I'm going to pick up the white or like this albino or some sort of white hue to where I can have one of all three. So water clarity really determines what bait choice or what color choice you're going to choose on your swim bait. This is one of my favorites. This is super durable, and I'm using this and just winding around those places those fish are blowing up on bait, or even current situations up in the river systems and stuff like that. A lot of times the fish will get on little current seams and little points, and that's when I'm going to throw that little deal right there, 3/16-ounce head, because I'm going to be fishing this typically in 5 foot or less this time of year, and so I'm trying to keep it over that grass, keep it up in the water column. or swimming around shad schools in that shallower water, and that's why I'm picking that 3/16-ounce head. So that's number 2 for the deal. Okay, so for some of you guys who are fishing grass places, hydrilla, milfoil, the water's starting to come down, or the grass is starting to get to the top here on Chickamauga, this is my favorite time of year, and Gunnersville for that matter, anywhere really that has that grass, a hydrilla mats up, and it gets that scummy look to it. A frog is hard to beat this time of year, okay? It just is. The bluegill actually get in those mats. So the bluegill actually get in a lot of these grass mats. As it hollows out, those bluegill get in there. Those bass will go in there and eat on the bait, eat on the bluegill, eat on a lot of times there will be some shad that'll move in there as well. So one of my favorite frogs for this application is a Terminator walking frog. This is the bigger profile, and the reason I like this one is it has a bigger profile body. So when I'm actually walking that frog, some of these mats are really thick, and so I want them to know that that bait's there, and I'm twitch. I want it to displace a lot more water. So that's why I picked that walking frog. And then, 50 pound to 65 pound braid. Color, you can switch it up. Bluegill colors, this one's a shad profile. But one tip that I tend to do is I cut my legs. This is particularly for mat fishing. I don't want those fish to feel that vibration of that bait and come up there and short strike it. So I'm cutting those legs. They're not really seeing the legs on my frog. So I'm cutting my legs down as much as I possibly can. That way when that fish comes up, they only have a really short window to be able to get to that hook point. The longer it is, it could be all the way back here, and it could be dragging around, and they just start biting the back of your frog, and you aren't going to get the hook into those fish. So that's any color, really you catch them on black as well, but realistically, it's just figuring out the area of the lake that those fish are pulled up into those mats, and then sitting down and really fishing that area thoroughly with a frog. It's seriously probably my favorite way to fish this time of year, is getting in that mat of vegetation and throwing that frog in that stuff. So that is number 3. Number 4, spinnerbait. Spinnerbaits, because of the transition of the year. This is something that I always have tied on. Sometimes a little bit more stained water, sometimes clear water. It really does not matter. I have a 3-blade. This is one of my 3 blades. I use this for a shad spawn, but I also use it for this time of year because, again, we're imitating a lot of threadfin shad or smaller bait fish. This is a little bit bigger head. It's actually a 1 ounce or 3/4 that I custom made up. It's an accent spinnerbait, one of my signature series spinnerbaits. And then this is a 1/2 ounce. And this is the guy that I throw most of the time. So when there's a little current, a little bit of stained water. Blue glimmer is one of my favorite colors for this time of year, just because it's real natural and the water starts to get a little cleaner. This color works really well still in a little bit of stained water. If the water's a little bit more stained, go with your chartreuse and white, go with your whites. But overall, a lot of people think that if the water's dirty, you have to go to a big Colorado blade. I do not like a Colorado blade and slowing that bait down this time of year. Even in stained water, I want something that moves a little bit of water with a willow blade. But I want that profile, that thump, moving through that area pretty quickly, like a school of bait fish. You got to think that small bait, or that even those, threadfin, or even a lot of the times the gizzard shad that are in that zone at 3-4 inches, they're not making a lot of commotion. Those fish can really see them. They're used to that stained water, and that's why I'd really prefer a double willow leaf or a tandem or a 3-blader. If the water's a little bit more clear. If the water's cleaner, I'm going to go with more of a all silver blades, like this one right here. If the water is more of just an in-between standard, a big gold blade and a silver works well for me. This is actually my 1/2 ounce accent spinnerbait signature series, and this is sort of my all-around fish catcher. Just double willow, catches them pretty consistently. I'm going to fish this around wood, fishing around rock, fishing around undercut banks. Typically laydowns is what I prefer, or even like boat docks, something in the backs of pockets and stuff like that. That's when that spinnerbait's really going to shine. Or even on flats and some of the grass as well. There's not a wrong place to throw a spinnerbait. Typically in the cleaner water, you're going to need a little bit of wind or a little bit of weather. So if you have a little bit of wind that day you're fishing out there on that body of water you're fishing, a spinnerbait can be your best friend, because you can just cast out there, wind it, and get bites. So that is next on the line. We have 2 more baits. left before we're going to call October done with, I don't know which one I'm going to do first. Let me think here. Let me think. All right, I'm going to do this one first. I'll save the best for last. Not the best, but just, I got to have it always in there. Next on the list is a jerkbait. This right here is a Rapala jerkbait. This is a Shadow Rap Deep. And the one thing that you're going to notice about this little dude is it's a little bit different. The hooks on this thing are a little bit different. I have two hooks in the back, but then I have a hook up front that has a little bit of, it's a VMC hybrid bladed treble hook. And that blade up there, again, typically this is the #1 time of the year that I'm really particular on imitating the bait fish that they're really keying in on. Most places, whether you're fishing for spotted bass, largemouth, even smallmouth, they'll be blowing up on bait sometimes that small, that tiny little blade. So I use this, if you will, as sort of something to draw them from a location, draw the fish up out of the cover or out of grass flats or grass edges. And then if they're really getting fickle and for some reason they're not biting my jerkbait really well or getting the back hook, that's when I'll put that front hook with that blade. That blade's flailing around and they'll come up there, and a lot of times, and I've seen this several times, especially in the fall. It doesn't seem to matter as much in the springtime, but in the fall, it seems to matter a ton, and they'll come up there and bite that front hook, which will give you a better hookup to land ratio, and get those fish in the boat. Colors, all depends on the watercolor, but I like the natural colors. Overall, something short of shad profile. If the water's a little bit dirtier, go with your whites. If the water's cleaner, go more translucent. So, but that little hybrid treble is definitely a tip that you want to think about. Now, the other thing is, because the water is not as cold, this is not a jerk, pause, let it sit there forever. I can put bigger hooks on any jerkbait that I want to throw because I'm not worried about that bait sinking as much. I'm jerk, stop. Jerk, stop. My retrieve is faster. Their metabolism is faster. They're really trying to feed up. And so I have to make them react. The longer they get to see it this time of year, typically is not good. So now, do I want to be jerking, every jerk? No, you want to still pause. They still have to get a vibe on what's going on. They look up, okay. But I'm going to definitely be working this bait faster and getting those fish to trigger on that bait. Okay, so that's 5. 5. We got 5 down, 1 more to go. Okay, so we went through all of that to get to the final lure selection, and you guys are probably like, where the heck's the topwater? This is the time of year to throw a topwater. And I've thought, obviously, accent buzzbait is one of my favorite things to throw. I've talked a little bit about, talked about it a lot over previous videos. That's something that I definitely would pick. But this one, if I had one topwater to throw, for more specifically this time of year, I'm going to pick up this topwater, this type of topwater, and that's a walking bait. Day in, day out. This is Skitter V. This is a 3-hook, bigger profile. This is a 2-hooker, smaller profile. And the two colors that I throw a ton, your chromes and then your bones. Bone is going to be more of my pick when I'm trying to ultimately let those fish really get to see what is going on. They can't visually see it as well. The water's a little bit dirtier. And when we get a lot of that wind and a lot of that kind of, a lot of the windy days stir up the water and make the water a little bit dirtier, and that's why I pick a bone or that more of a shad pattern for this time of year. Now, the chromes are really good when you have the sunny days. Don't be afraid to you don't need to put the topwater down when it's a sunny day in the fall. Topwater, especially in the fall, this is an all-day deal. It actually sometimes gets better in the afternoon as the sun gets up, and that's a lot of times when I'll go with more of a chrome base, because when that sun's out and it's flashing, you got a lot of wind, fronts are coming through, you got a lot of north wind. You're throwing that bait, you're moving real fast and just shining. They can't really see what's going on. They just go up there and slap at it. They come up there and get that bait, and that's why I like chrome. Now, the only other bait that I will color-wise is more translucent colors. So whatever walking bait that you're ultimately going to throw more of those translucent colors on those flat, calm days when if the water's clean and it's a flat, calm day, you're going to want to work that bait pretty fast so they can't visually see it really well, or even a clear top water. So that's what my suggestion, you know, bone, chrome, more of a translucent color if the water is a little bit cleaner, or you have a flat calm day and you have to trick those bass and they're a little bit fickle, a little bit more fickle than normal, and then just go to town. I mean, obviously I picked up about half of my tackle box right here. I picked a lot of different lures that I think are going to be applicable for this time of year. I know I forgot a handful of them because there's so many of them that can work at this point in time. That's why fall fishing can be one of the toughest times of fishing. But I'll put these particular baits on my front deck at any point in time, and this time, especially in October, and I feel like I'm going to have a chance at a good day no matter about where I'm at in the country. So hopefully you guys learned a little bit from this video. Drop a comment below. Let me know what your favorite lure to throw in the month of October is, and we will see you on the next one.